A massive $696 billion is what the annual federal tax gap currently amounts to. Out of this enormous figure, a whopping $514 billion comes directly from the everyday American taxpayer. You might think that this missing money is mainly being hidden by giant corporations and offshore accounts. But the uncomfortable truth is that it's regular people and small businesses that are picking up the tab. Before I dive deeper into how this audit crisis is affecting you, make sure to subscribe today and leave a quick comment telling me which city you're watching from. The IRS recently released an updated set of statistics regarding the federal tax gap. This critical measure represents the gap between the total amount of taxes that should be collected and what is actually paid. Nearly $700 billion a year is missing, which is a huge problem for the federal budget. The government is already dealing with massive deficits, which puts the entire American economy in danger. Politicians urgently need to gather this missing revenue, but they can't afford to raise taxes through unpopular measures. So, they've turned to using the Federal Tax Collection Agency to quietly target everyday people. Let's break down exactly who the government is going after in this situation. Corporate income tax evasion only makes up about 7% of the entire tax gap. On the other hand, individual income tax evasion is the main problem, accounting for almost 74% of the gap. A large portion of this missing revenue comes from small businesses and sole proprietors. Freelancers, independent contractors, and gig workers are now in the government's sights. The core issue here comes from what the government calls third-party income visibility. In a traditional job, your employer reports your earnings to the IRS automatically. This means the government knows exactly how much you made before you even file your tax return. Since this income is already visible, the compliance rate for people working regular jobs is very high, over 90%. However, income from small businesses and freelance work doesn't have the same third-party verification. The IRS estimates that more than half of all income from small businesses is underreported. As a result, the government has decided that small business owners are largely responsible for the tax gap. To address this, the government initially aimed to expand the IRS by investing $80 billion. The goal was to hire thousands of auditors to focus on the wealthy, complex tax structures of billionaires and large corporations. Auditing a billionaire's tax return requires a team of top-notch forensic accountants working for years, and the return on investment is low. Wealthy individuals use expensive lawyers to tie up agents in endless legal battles. But political battles led to major funding cuts for the IRS. Billions of dollars that were meant for corporate audits were slashed. This funding reduction forced the IRS to make a tough decision. They still need to close the $600 billion tax gap, but they no longer have the resources to go after billionaires and large corporations. So, they've turned their attention to the easiest targets, the middle class and small business owners. Modern automated systems can process thousands of tax returns in seconds. They look for simple mistakes, like incorrect deductions or discrepancies in small business revenue. Sending out audit letters costs the government very little. Unlike wealthy billionaires, the average middle-class taxpayer can't afford expensive tax lawyers. So, when an audit letter arrives, most people panic and simply pay the penalty. This makes middle-class taxpayers an easy and cost-effective target for the IRS. Historical data shows that lower-income earners, especially those making less than $25,000, have faced a disproportionate amount of audits, primarily due to the popular Earned Income Tax Credit. If you have a small business or freelance income, your audit risk increases. Deductions like home offices or business travel expenses are now red flags for the IRS. They assume that freelancers and small business owners are mixing personal and business expenses. They also focus on unreported cash transactions and small business losses. Even simple math errors on your tax return can trigger an audit. The burden of proof is always on the taxpayer during an audit. You need to keep detailed records and receipts for every expense to avoid penalties. The stress of dealing with a federal audit can be devastating for small businesses. This is the hidden cost of the tax gap. Everyday Americans are paying for the government's inability to go after large corporations. While wealthy corporations can use sophisticated accounting techniques to avoid taxes, small business owners face intense scrutiny. If you're a freelancer or run a small business, you need to be extra careful with your finances. You can't afford to make mistakes. Hiring a certified public accountant, CPA, is no longer optional. It's essential. CPAs know what triggers audits and how to document your expenses properly. Using cheap tax software might seem like a good idea, but it won't protect you from an audit. When the IRS comes knocking, you'll be on your own. The IRS also has a special focus on businesses that handle a lot of cash. If your business takes in a lot of cash payments, the IRS sees it as a sign of potential tax evasion. Using digital payment processors, which leave a paper trail, is a good way to protect yourself from an audit. It may cost you in processing fees, but it's worth it to avoid the headache of an audit. It's also important to separate your business and personal finances. Keeping your personal and business accounts completely separate shows that your business is legitimate and helps protect you from audits. This means you should have separate bank accounts for your business and avoid mixing personal and business expenses. Now, let's consider the broader economic effects of this aggressive targeting of small businesses. Small businesses are the engine of job creation in the U.S., but instead of growing and hiring more people, entrepreneurs are spending huge amounts of money on tax compliance. This reduces their ability to invest in new employees or expand their businesses, which has a negative impact on the economy. By squeezing small businesses, the government is hurting the very people who create jobs and drive growth. The $696 billion tax gap is a sign of a failing system. The tax code is overly complicated, and it's designed to favor the wealthy elite. Simplifying the tax code would help close the gap, but politicians won't do that because they rely on complex loopholes to benefit their corporate donors. As a result, individuals are the ones who bear the burden. This system is unfair, and the government knows it. But instead of simplifying things, they're using advanced technology to target people who can't afford to defend themselves. The rich have lawyers to protect them, but the middle class is left exposed. If you don't take action, you'll be caught in this system. To survive in this environment, you need to take steps to protect your financial future. Start by organizing your finances and keeping detailed records. Keep all your receipts, bank statements, and financial documents for at least 6 years. Separate your business and personal accounts, and don't rely on cash payments. Use a CPA to help you navigate the tax code and avoid mistakes that could trigger an audit. Don't rely on consumer tax software that might trigger algorithmic audits. The IRS is using artificial intelligence to automate the audit process. This means that a computer, not a human, will decide whether you're audited. The IRS uses algorithms to flag returns that are likely to be wrong or underreported. If your deductions deviate from the norm, you'll be flagged for an audit. This system doesn't care if you're a legitimate small business owner trying to make a living. It just looks for discrepancies and issues penalties automatically. The IRS is also using machine learning to improve its algorithms. This means that the system is constantly learning and getting better at finding mistakes. If your tax return doesn't match the IRS's expectations, it will trigger an audit. If you claim business deductions that don't match the IRS's data, you'll be flagged. And if your business has consistent losses, the system will assume that you're trying to avoid taxes. This automated system is devastating for small business owners. If you have multiple sources of income, you're more likely to trigger an audit. Even small mistakes can lead to huge penalties. And defending yourself against these audits is expensive and difficult. Most people can't afford to hire a tax lawyer to fight the IRS. This means that the middle class is left to deal with the consequences of a broken system. The government is using the tax code to extract money from people who can't afford to fight back. This is a regressive tax that hurts the most vulnerable people in our economy. The IRS is using technology to target small businesses, freelancers, and gig economy workers. This is a silent war against the middle class, and if you don't take action, you'll be caught in the crossfire. To protect your financial future, you need to act now. Organize your finances, hire a CPA, and keep your receipts. Separate your business and personal accounts, and don't rely on cash transactions. Understand the system and take steps to avoid being caught in the IRS's automated web. This is your best defense against a government that is using technology to extract your wealth. The government's budget deficit is massive, and they need money to cover it. But instead of going after wealthy corporations, they're targeting the middle class. The IRS is using AI to automate audits and squeeze small businesses for every dollar they can. This is a crisis that's hurting American entrepreneurs and workers. You need to take control of your financial destiny. Start preparing now to protect your business and your wealth. The IRS is coming for you, and you need to be ready.